that would have been a good idea.
No, it wouldn't have been. It's not just about realism. I was being buried, and I was cold, and I was dying, and I was facing death. So no acting required. Here we are, by ourselves, just hanging out.
No one's feeding us ideas. This is just coming.
We enjoy sitting in these chairs at this angle with our cups of coffee. Here.
Cheers.
But is it coffee? Do you remember the first place we met? Literally, I remember I asked to see you after seeing The Witch because I admired it so, and I thought this person's a filmmaker. And I was excited to meet you, and we arranged a meeting. Do you remember where we went?
I remember that we went to an Italian restaurant in the East Village or Tribeca. Oh. I was at the time barely able to pay my bills, so I was aside from the fact that I was incredibly nervous to meet one of my heroes, I was also excited to have a full meal, and I feel like I ordered a ton of food.
That seems hard to believe. That seems hard to believe because The Witch did very well.
Yeah, but it was I hadn't gotten the residuals. I think weirdly the first thing that I saw you in was I was probably in first grade when I watched The Last Temptation of Christ.
Which every first grader should see, by the way. Wow, crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the guy that saw Nosferatu at 9 years old, too.
Well, there you go. So,
What were your parents doing?
Well, my mom was had a kids theater company, and my dad was a Shakespeare professor. So yeah, we didn't do Last Temptation of Christ in the children's theater, but. And
what did you think of it? Did you think it was cool, or?
I thought it was super cool.
Did you know Martin Scorsese movies? You watched Mean Streets at 5?
No. But yeah, it's interesting. That was my Jesus, not Max von Sydow or something, so.
Once I get to name drop here, once I met Max von Sydow.
When was that?
A guy I admired because really my first really foreign films that I saw at a much later age than you were Bergman films. Yeah. So Max von Sydow was
yeah.
I met him once and he was very elegant and he said, it was after Last Temptation, and he said, "We are both members of a very exclusive club." Which one of those silly actor moments that you really love.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I feel like some actors talk about actors who influence them, or you can see them clearly, you can see De Niro's grimace in There Will Be Blood, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But is there actors who were influential to you either as a kid, but more interestingly to me kind of as you were maturing as an actor, in your.
Well, when
20s.
I was a kid, I was like a normal kid, and I never thought I'd be an actor. I mean, I was in plays and things. I grew up in Wisconsin, and I didn't know anybody that made their living in any way, in any, as an artist or a performer or something like that. So I have lots of older brothers and sisters, and I'd hitchhike down to University of Wisconsin-Madison, and they had lots of cinema clubs at that time. So you'd see all these foreign films and stuff that you would never see at your local theater.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning. And I remember one of the first films I saw was The Magician, also called The Face, which was an early Bergman film.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, that would be right up your alley. I mean, it's very simple, a story, but I love that film. There's beautiful things in it.
Yeah.
And a great performance by Max von Sydow.
So really, he was.
Well, I think I like genre films. I grew up on horror films as a little kid. I loved Boris Karloff, for example.
Yeah.
I loved Frankenstein, but I was interested in other things.
Sure. Yeah.
And then once I thought, maybe I'd be an actor. I always admired actors that didn't feel like actors. I mean, the classic one I cite is Warren Oates, or Harry Dean Stanton. They were people that you didn't seem like they were trained actors, where other people that were interested in actors were usually interested in more celebrated actors or more theatrical actors, Olivier or Marlon Brando or something like that. I mean, I admire those people, but I didn't. I had a poster on my wall, but it wasn't of an actor. It was of Raquel Welch. And I came up to her once and I said, I had a poster of you on the wall, in the beginning. And, when I was a kid, and her face dropped, and it was like, nice talking to you.
Oh, man.
Yeah, because I'm Mr. Gaff Man. I didn't mean to, I meant to flatter her.
It's cool that you talk about that, because with back to, not being into the idea of like Olivier or Brando as like an acting ideal or whatever, but your performances, you have like Florida Project, obviously like you're in a situation where you're working with a lot of non-actors, but you give that same kind of like naturalism to that world. But obviously, like from stage work and something like Green Goblin, or even, to even some of the stuff you do in my movies, is coming from like another style, and is like more perhaps like indulging in the performance.
But I don't see it as that. It's funny.
I don't think I would. That's a cruel assessment.
No,
but
listen,
what I mean.
I'm good with you because I know performing, and listen, that's okay. I can take it from you. But I just did an interview with a guy, and he said, yeah, I liked your performance a lot in Nosferatu, but I talked to a friend, and he said, wow, way over the top. I was quite surprised. And I'm always surprised when someone says something's over the top. I'm really sold on this idea that one man's meat is another man's poison.
Well,
and sometimes a very naturalistic performance, to me, looks lazy and not engaged. Where I like it a little kicked up. You always got to dial in, between the two poles of, being really loose and being really...
But also, I think the only thing in Nosferatu that is deliberately...
over the top?
No, I mean stylized, is the fairy tale framing of things. Two things about this before we move on is that, like, first of all, like, if you're being chased by a vampire, like, how are you supposed to act? Like, chill? Like a mumblecore movie? Like, you're gonna be crazy. Yeah. And then also, like, your character is an eccentric.
Yes.
Like, look at Zizek. If someone did that without... it's true. Like, you'd be like, come on. Like, that's over the top,
I know what my intention was.
Yeah.
And my intention is to play the actions, and I'm not thinking about size, and I'm not thinking about selling anything, and I'm not thinking... So, the proportion comes from the energy, that's all.
Yeah.
And you don't do any more than you need to do to accomplish what the character thinks you need to accomplish. So.
Exactly, yeah. Talking about career progression is always weird, but is there a role that you felt like came at, particularly the right time for you in your journey, either as an actor or as a man?
I don't know, because every time you do something, you think, how do you do this? I really have that. And I feel good. Actors talk a lot about, it's good to have fear and it's good to have uncertainty. And that's true. After a while, you shake hands with that uncertainty and that not knowing and kind of embrace it,
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's fun to think about, roles that I thought I wasn't really right for, but I thought, give it a swing, Since you mentioned Last Temptation, I always think it's kind of funny that I had heard that people were auditioning for Last Temptation for a long time, mm-hmm. and everybody and his brother was going for this thing, but not me. And then finally, in the end, I didn't even have a phone in my room, and the landlady said, "Is a call for you from a guy, Martin Scorsese, basically." And I'm like, "Yes," and it wasn't Martin Scorsese, it was my agent saying, "Listen, Martin Scorsese wants to see you." And I said, "For what role?" And he says, "Jesus, you idiot." And I thought, that's like a bad idea. But then I read the script and then I got it because I didn't know the script yet. But that's a case of the fact that I didn't think I was right for it, was correct, because when I got there, it's a reactive role. Yeah. It's a role of a guy that's not accepting what he's supposed to do. And it was the right time for, me to start a kind of examination of study the Bible and things like that, and the different ways the story was told. So that's not really answering your question, but I thought that might be a fun story to tell.
It's a great story. And how do you feel about early Christian Gnosticism?
See, he can't help himself. If we're making a movie, I'll do a deep dive, but right now, I'm not your guy.
It's funny because I have had more than one journalist kind of point out the fact that in all 3 films, you've been cast as like the keeper of secrets.
I
and
like
I was
that.
like, oh, yeah,
Because in my life, I don't have any secrets. I just spill.
And what does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's good. I don't know.
Because I guess really it's more a reflection of how I feel about you.
Go on.
This is blushing time, but
you
have like this deep intelligence and a curiosity about.
I'm blushing already. Deep intelligence. We could just go with intelligence.
You're interested in so many things. Like a lot of actors are less interested in things, and also the kind of humor that you're able to imbue your characters with. You have the joke of life, you have the joke of life, and I think that's
the nicest thing you can say.
Let me see if I can do better. Who could be a court jester and an oracle at the same time? Not a lot of actors could do that convincingly.
You give me fun things to do. That's for sure. Often they ask me, why do you like Robert Eggers? And The Witch, it hit me so hard. I walked into The Witch. I didn't know anything about it. And it was so easy to enter that world. It wasn't pointed to. It was lived in. And I think every time I've worked with you, when you enter the set, the most impressive thing is everything has a function. And when you enter that and you submit to that, it makes the pretending or the being there so easy. That's the most perfect jumping off point to do anything, because the world drops away and you have a new world. And as an actor, that's the place that you want to be, that place of being active and feeling an itch, leaning into stuff. I like it so much, and I found that true every time I've worked with you.
Thank
you. And also the thing that people don't know, unless they're, really studied, I mean, your average audience, people in cinema probably know, is these incredibly long takes that there's no cutting away. The first thing, what I think a lot of people don't know is when we were surprised when Robert Pattinson and I, when we got there and we went to a rehearsal, we assumed we'd rehearse the scenes. But in fact, we rehearsed the shots.
Yeah.
You and Jarrod basically said, this is the way it's going to be, boys. And then we got to fold into it. And in some ways, that would drive some actors crazy. But I love it so much because that is such a strong structure. You've got everything at your available to live in that structure. You don't have to find stuff. And I love that. Because I grew up in a theater where the technicians were like the actors and the actors were like the technicians. And I think that's a wonderful way to be, because it makes everything fluid, and also, it's natural. It's so collaborative. You depend on each other.
I like it as a storytelling mechanism because the audience, I mean, there is scenes with cuts and there's reverse shots in my films, like whatever. But I think when you have these long unbroken takes, like unconsciously, like you're just more in it, and especially with the period world building and everything, it's just another layer to keep the audience engaged without, anything pulling them out. But as you were saying, like experience of making the film because everyone is so focused and it is all about the technicians as well as the actors, and the dolly pusher is as engaged as you, as Aaron, as Lily, as the carpenters who have to move the walls during the take to accommodate the camera movement. Creates a tremendous amount of focus, and it really, as you said, collaboration. Like everyone feels like they're a part of really making the movie and the scene and the moment, and that is a good feeling.
The thing that I always think about with the long takes too is, I remember reading, I think it was Walter Murch, talked about, he always looked for a cut when people blinked,
Yeah.
A cut is always like a blink,
It is, yeah. Which is why I'm always asking everyone not to blink.
Yes, no, which is, and I remember in the Lighthouse, a lot of people are like, we have that one long speech that I have that's a curse. And people are like, you didn't blink, man. Wow, you didn't blink. And it's like, yeah, I wasn't, Robert told me not to blink, so I can get it together and not blink I had stuff to do. I had a kind of complicated picture to paint with those words, with those beautiful words. So no reason I had to blink, but that's a good example. That was one technical thing that I take on, and it makes a stronger commitment to what you're doing. I look at you and I always think about the burying in the lighthouse.
Sure.
I mean, that was like one of the most incredible experiences for me to do that. And it was painful, but I liked it.
When Ryan Johnson did a Q&A at the DGA for the Lighthouse, and he said, "Oh, when you buried Willem, I presume you shot that on stage." And I thought, "Oh, that would have been a good idea."
No, it wouldn't have been. It's not just about realism. I was being buried, and I was cold, and I was dying, and I was facing death. So no acting required. The beauty of the Lighthouse is, I always say, you can't play a red skin. You can't play that kind of weather on your face. We were out there, and that told us what to do. And that's why it's so beautiful when you can shoot on location. Someone asked me the other day, they said, what do you think, from working with him 3 times, how's he changed? I was like, same guy, but maybe what I noticed about, the scale is different, but I think when I saw you on Nosferatu, the really beautiful thing was nothing can be perfect, and you realize that so much a part of being a director is knowing when to hold and when to fold, and you're so good at that now. There's a practical aspect that's not giving up, but the solution shifts, without giving in. But you're also, to start.
Very, very kind, thank you.
Hard-headed about, getting what you need.
Ellen asks your character, does evil come from within or beyond?
I have the problem with what is evil. You can stop me right there. I don't have it all worked out because, sometimes you do things and you don't totally understand what they mean, and they're going to mean different things to different people. But in retrospect, when I think about my character's relationship with Ellen, it's kind of beautiful because he's the one that sees her. Yeah. Nobody else sees her. And you talked, when we were talking the other day, you talked very beautifully about that triangle, and that's what's so modern about this. You've got the dutiful husband. Well, you describe it.
Ellen, like your character, she's an outsider, but she really has no one who understands her, and she's a modern person who sort of is existing in the 19th century, and she has this love triangle between her husband, who she does love, and he loves her, but he cannot fully see her and fully understand her, and cannot understand her connection to the dark side or the other side. And unfortunately, the one person, before she meets you, who does see that is a demon. He's a vampire, and he's an abuser,
he's coming.
and he's coming. and so that is like the tragedy that it's only in this like incredibly toxic relationship, but that's a love story, but really more about obsession. That's, you know, where she can find connection to this part of herself. So I mean, does evil come from within or beyond? We all have darkness inside of ourselves to some degree. And your character also talks about you have to face that evil exists in order to fight it. And you tell Ellen to like crucify the evil within her. Yeah. This is part of the reason why horror movies like are important. Like obviously there's, you know, entertainment. People enjoy Terrifier movies, not my cup of tea, but like, you know, whatever rings your bell. These stories are deeply important to explore what is the darkness. Not like, it doesn't even have to be about you. It's like, it's in humanity. You know what I'm saying?
The shadow side of all things. Yeah. You know, doing some press together, I really enjoyed hearing you, how far back this thing with Nosferatu goes. 9 years old. You're sitting in New Hampshire?
New Hampshire, yeah.
You got a VHS.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that VHS?
We had to go
behind the liquor store?
Yeah. We had to mail order it, you know, because there was no internet and no Amazon and all that. Yeah, so when it finally came, I was very excited. It's funny because the VHS had no sound. Like there was literally wacky. No score on it. And I think that the movie might not have had the same effect on me had it had like a cheesy organ or synth score, but I was watching it like utterly silent. And it was made from like a poor 16 millimeter print, and so it kind of seemed real. And you know, you can't see Max Schreck's bald cap and his grease paint, and there's certain shots where his eyes almost look like cat eyes. This is what gave the rumors that he was a real vampire, hence, you know, Shadow of the Vampire. But yeah, his performance and the atmosphere of that film, and Murnau's and Galeen like taking Dracula and turning it into this really simple fairy tale with lots of enigma, it hit me harder than any other Dracula I had seen before then or since. And then when I was 17, with my friend Ashley Kelly Tata, who's now a theater and opera director, we did a high school production of Nosferatu on stage.
Missed that one. Too bad.
I'll send you some pictures.
I thought it was cool. I read that it was all in black and white.
Yeah, it was. Set. It was black and white. Like we painted ourselves black and white. The set was black and white.
Did you play Orlok?
I did. Yes. And then we a local theater impresario named Ed Langlois saw the show and invited us to do a more professional version of it in his theater. And that kind of, that made me sure that this is what I wanted to do with my career.
So you played Orlok. Do you miss performing? Because you performed after that as well.
Yes, you love to get me on the topic of me as an actor.
Sorry.
In the right.
Better than talking about me as an actor.
You know, I don't miss it too much. I do when we do a Q&A. Yeah. I can feel the vibe from the audience sometimes, and I'm like, I'm a little bit of a ham, I suppose. But I think
ham is being an actor, huh?
But I think, if there was like an Elizabethan thing or an Edwardian thing where I think my look suited it, I might find a tiny thing for me to do.
Okay, can I be there for that?
You damn well better be.
Okay, good.
It took a long time for this movie to get greenlit, to find the right.
What was the problem?
The problem was...
You weren't ready.
I wasn't ready. Yeah, thanks, Willem. Like, you know, whatever the problems were, I'm glad that they were problems because, as you say, I wasn't ready. And I was...
No, I don't know. It would have been different.
It would have been different. I think it would have been, you know, possibly disastrous if it was greenlit the first time I tried to do it. But anyway, no, I mean, like, we have such an incredible cast. I mean, really.
Beautiful. We were taking pictures the other day, and I thought, this is a good lineup.
Yeah, and like lovely people. Like everybody was so engaged.
But people always say that when they...
No, yeah, I know. It's because it's like, you know, obviously we're in the industry. And so we know the true story. Yeah, and sometimes when I'm watching BTS, I know like that really they all hated each other.
Right.
But it's not the case here.
Right.
What's a film that you've seen or play that inspired you lately?
I saw a play in Naples that really inspired me, and it was a Pinocchio.
Oh.
I was so moved from the beginning to the end, not only by the performance, but also the audience's relationship to it. Naples is a great theater town,
Yeah.
but these people were so connected to this production. I felt it. But the thing that was really interesting is I thought, why am I so moved? I mean, it was a beautiful script and beautifully staged and everything. And I thought it was interesting that there was such grace to what they were doing because they were not performers and they could only do what they were doing. There was nothing extra. There's a beauty to it because nothing else is going on but that. Mm-hmm. It's in the same league why sometimes it's so beautiful to work with non-actors because they don't have an identity of an actor. Yeah. So they don't overthink things and they go to it. They do what they can do and they get out of the way. They let the nature, roll. And I guess I was, once again, I was moved by that fact that how important it is to disappear into the actions. I don't know. The most beautiful things I see are usually when performers just commit to something and it's like the grace of an athlete. What they're doing is what they're doing and something happens to them and then you can be with them because they aren't pushing you away with an idea. They aren't selling you anything. When it's a story about the Pinocchio story about what it is to be human. It was just gorgeous. Mm. How about you? Have you seen, can you share?
Well, yours is cooler, but I weirdly have never seen the silent film By the Law until recently.
Well, you got me, baby.
Well, it's this Russian silent movie that's based on a Jack London novel. It's like it was made for me. It also feels like there's no way
You're going to be working on that?
No. But it looks like there's no way that I couldn't have made The Lighthouse without seeing it. There's actually are some images that's like, that is in The Lighthouse. What on earth? But basically what's really exciting for me is this American, well, it's Canadian, but it's like this like American setting made by Russians. And there's murder and cabin fever and desperation, but it has the like heightened Russian
expressionistic kind of.
Well, but it's also aren't wearing makeup because like Russians weren't really into that in the silent era. So it has like a more raw feeling, but it has the like explosive, like Dostoevsky personality disordered conflict of ego and it's very satisfying.
By
the law.
The law.
It's always great talking with you, Willem, but I look forward to the next time we actually get to work together properly.
Yep. Good. Me too. I can't wait because we got stuff to do.
We got stuff to do.
Yeah.